When you hear the word church, what comes to mind? A building, a Sunday service, a denomination. But the word the New Testament actually uses carries something far bigger and far more demanding. That word is ekklēsia. The lexicon puts it plainly. Originally meaning a civic gathering called together for public business, this word becomes the New Testament term for the church. A people summoned, not a place you visit. And here is what makes this little letter remarkable. John uses this one word 3 times in a single short letter, and those 3 uses tell us what the church is, what it does, and what can destroy it. Follow along in the study as we walk through it together. Start with the word itself. Long before the New Testament, in classical Athens, the ekklēsia was the assembly duly summoned. Citizens officially called together to conduct the affairs of the city. It was never just any crowd. It was a called and constituted body. And the word tells you why. It comes from ek, meaning out, and kaleō, meaning to call. A called out, gathered assembly. That is the picture buried under the English word church. Not people who simply decided to meet, but a people summoned, on purpose, by someone with the authority to summon them. Hold that thought, because the next question turns out to be everything. Who does the calling? Here is the twist. The word ekklēsia by itself is neutral. In Acts 19, Luke uses the very same word for a pagan mob rioting in Ephesus. Albert Barnes notes that it signifies any assembly, good or bad, lawful or unlawful. So the character of the assembly is set entirely by who does the calling. A magistrate calls a civic assembly, a mob calls a riot. But when Jesus calls it, you get the church. And Jesus is the very first to use the word this way. You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. Matthew 16:18. My church. Christ is the one summoning. The church does not exist because believers decided to gather. It exists because he called it into being. Now watch the word appear 3 times inside this one letter, each time teaching something essential. The first appearance, verse 6. Traveling missionaries return and report how a man named Gaius had welcomed them, and John says they testified to the church about his love. You will do well to send them on their way in a manner worthy of God. 3:1-6. Here the church is the venue of testimony, a community that notices faithfulness, names it out loud, and celebrates it. The cross-reference makes the aim explicit. God is the one who calls you into his own kingdom and glory. 1 Thessalonians 2:12. So the question it puts to us is simple. Are we building a church culture where faithfulness is actually seen, named, and honored? The second appearance, verse 9, turns from celebration to warning. John writes, about this, but Diotrephes, who loves to be first, will not accept our instruction. 3 John 1:9. That phrase, loves to be first, translates a single Greek word John uses here, and nowhere else in the New Testament, philoprōteuōn, to strive to be first. The Geneva Bible is blunt. Ambition and covetousness, 2 pestilent sins, are condemned in this one man. Befused John's letter. He rejected apostolic authority itself. And Jesus had already named this exact spirit. The greatest among you should be like the youngest, and the one who leads like the one who serves. Luke 22:24. The church is a servant community under one authority, the authority of Christ. The moment someone strives to be first, the whole assembly is threatened. The third appearance, verse 10, is the darkest of the 3. Diotrephes does not stop at pride. John says he refuses to welcome the brothers and forbids those who want to do so, even putting them out of the church. 3 John 1:10. The Greek word for casting out is ekballō, and it is the same word used for casting out demons. Sit with that. The authority Christ gave the Church to guard its own holiness, weaponized, turned into a tool of personal power. But John does not stay silent. "If I come," he says, "I will call attention to it." The Church must protect the integrity of its own assembly, because God himself sees it when his people are unjustly cast out. So what does a healthy church actually look like? This letter and its cross-references give a clear picture. First, she gathers, "Let us not neglect meeting together, as some have made a habit." Hebrews 10:25. She is summoned, and she responds. Second, she devotes herself to 4 things. Look at the earliest snapshot of the church in Acts. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Acts 2:42. Word, community, table, and prayer. Not programs, not platforms, these 4. Third, she speaks the truth in love and grows up, fitted and held together by every supporting ligament, every part doing its work. And fourth, she holds one head, so that in all things he may have preeminence. Colossians 1:18. Not a pastor, not a personality, Christ alone. John closes with 3 men, and they work like a mirror held up to every church. Gaius, who receives the missionaries, hosts them and walks in truth. The faithful member, Diotrephes, who grasps for first place, excludes and slanders, the corrupting influence. And Demetrius, of whom John writes that he has received a good testimony from everyone and from the truth itself, the model to imitate. Then John gives the hinge of the whole letter. Do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. 3 John 11. So the question lands squarely on us. Which of the 3 are you? And which culture are you building in your own church? Gaius's hospitality, Diotrephes' control, or Demetrius's quiet integrity? And then the letter ends with something quietly stunning. John says he has much to write, but he would rather not use pen and ink. Instead, he wants to come and speak with them face to face. And not just to a crowd. Greet each friend, he says, by name. In an age of watching church on a screen, of trading community for content, John's last word is this: I want to see you face to face and by name. Not a number in a crowd, but known. That is the church. Now you are the body of Christ, and each of you is a member of it. Corinthians 12:27. Not a broadcast, not a building, not a brand. A summoned, named, beloved, face-to-face community, called out by Christ and growing up into Him who is the head. So hear the invitation. You are not a spectator, you are a member. You have been called, so show up, serve, welcome, walk in truth. That is the ekklēsia. If this study opened the Word for you, the whole thing, every verse, every cross-reference, every lexicon entry is waiting in the Scribe app. It is free to try for 30 days at scribe-bible.app.